this is the article that we're going to be looking at. We're going to be breaking this down. And if you look at this, you're going to see what we're talking about. So clearly, your Google search of the 1966 is incorrect because this is a 1973 Denver. It's an important distinction. Now, the Denver mint mark is important to the story. We'll get there because supposedly where this occurred was Philadelphia, and then these were shipped to Denver. So it's important to understand the concept. We're looking at this particular volume 32, number 6, November to December of 2023. This is actually released in November of 2023. And we know this because of something that happens a couple pages later. So as we dig through this, I'm going to go ahead and read this to you. And I know it's hard for some of you to see. I'm going to actually increase this a little bit so that you can see what I'm showing you a little bit better. So you guys should see that adjustment now. By John Martin, the Richmond Dime, A Search for Prominence. In June '76, my uncle brought me and my cousin to take a tour of the Philadelphia Mint. This would prove to be one of the most memorable experiences of my life. Once at the Mint, I was initially disappointed by the building itself. I expected majestic columns and domes like the Capitol buildings. But this was purpose-built for security, not aesthetics. Inside, we rode the escalator up to a balcony that goes around the perimeter of the operations floor. There were several viewing tubes that identified the individual operations on the floor. The walkway took us clockwise around the Mint display with silver and gold coins, large artworks that were reduced down to becoming designs, historical information. I was most interested in floor operations, but they were difficult to see in a large building. The last display on the tour before you head downstairs was the lobby where coins and proof sets were sold to make all the hours spent in the car worth it. The large display had photographs of coins that should have never existed, and there was an array of coins that started the lower right with the first coin struck. There was a gap of 1 or 2 coins, and then the rest showed the rapid destruction of the reverse. The reverse die, which is the anvil, had a central failure to the left pieces of the material to the surface becoming struck through the objects as further coins were struck. The central die failure was so deep that the coins had circulating unstruck surfaces becoming progressively dish-shaped, by the way. These dish-shaped coins could not pass through tolerance gauge because there were so many of them, they ended up jamming the conveyor belt and stopping production. Close to 1,000 coins had to be destroyed. This caused the reverse die damage of the obverse die in 1972. A man from the Bureau of Engraving and Printing traveled to the casting facility at the Philadelphia Mint to see if the mill could help with plate maintenance during a time of construction at the BEP. He brought one with him. It was an obsolete plate for testing purposes. The casting facility did the work on the sample, but were just too busy to take the work for the Bureau. During the process, the plate was placed face down on a die cooling rack. 2 small pieces of the types fell off the plate and onto the rack. At this time, the casting facility shared its space with the Mint die making facility. Soon after, a man came in to make reverse dies for the 1973 Denver dime. This is important because the Philadelphia Mint was making all of the dies for circulating coins for all of the mints. A die was made and inspected before it was placed into the cooling rack, top of the typeset, and then absorbed to the die flush with the field and in the headspace of the bus. The rack of the Denver dime was then sent to Denver Mint, where the die in question was polished and installed in a press. The first coin was struck almost perfect, but then added a massive inclusion to the 2 pieces of the typeset in the reverse die, caused a central die failure in the reverse die. The typeset then became an inclusion in the obverse die as well as an E and a 5. The E and the 5 were on the printing plate as the designation of the bank and the bills would first be sent for distribution. The bank was the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, Virginia. Thus, the error was called the Richmond Dime. So that's where the name comes from, okay? So all theory, all guessing aside, that's why they called it the Richmond Dime. It was also referred to the cluster at the Mint. 1 or 2 coins, you guys like my sound effect there. I hope you guys did. 1 or 2 coins had escaped the Mint. The Mint correspondence, the annual report of the director of the Mint showed at the end of 1973, there was a huge push For quality control of all the mints, the Denver Mint was hired to control the team to analyze the workings of the mint floor. When they found he approached any man, any job. This was then charged to the training for a specific position, then cross-trained for a second. The Philadelphia Mint also installed these optical comparators at every step of the process, as well as their die-making facilities. We go to the next page of this. The subjects, and here we list a whole bunch of stuff. Now, Paul is going to get into this because there's something very specific to discuss. So the study was undertaken in the scanning electron microscope in order to determine recognizable characteristics of struck, damaged, unstruck raw planchet surfaces. All of the subjects are modern dimes. The study was performed to illustrate the Richmond dime has raised unstruck planchet on the surface under its reverse. The coins were examined at many magnifications, over 50 micrographs were taken, and it was found that at 1,500 times magnification, the surrounding surfaces were best revealed. Special thanks to zoology professor John Rice, PhD of Harvard University, for donating over 12 hours of time for the project. Characteristics: unstruck surfaces show material handling scars from when the surface was part of a sheet, divots, imperfect lamination surfaces. Characteristic damaged surface shows smeared and terraced surfaces with displaced metal surfaces, differing elevation material. And then you see the 5 down there. Okay, this is where it talks a little bit about that. Characteristics. The E and the 5 were inclusion in the obverse die. The intersection shows that while one was on top of the other, there is no evidence of one cutting through the other, as their impression occurred simultaneously at the time of striking. The portion of the E in the field shows the die polish marks across and gouging it as it were part of the die at the time of polishing. The reverse showed poorly struck rim at the upper left quadrant, the result added by the material of the E in the 5, interfering with a complete strike. The struck through objects are the result of the die chips, a material that were left on the surface of the reverse after the striking of the first coin. We'll talk about the language there. There's a problem with that language. The flat, proud surface to the right of the largest struck object with raw planchet surface left untouched due to the large cavity left by the central die failure. I shared all this information with the Pacific Coast Numismatic Society. They said it gave him deja vu, as he may have read about this coin in the 1970s newsletters from Cone NECA or possibly Numismatic News Magazine. I'm searching for Providence of the Richmond Dime reference, and then the person who wrote this. And again, we know this was released in November because
actually gave his information.
Yeah, and
Article.
Yeah, here is where we see this area. You can see my mouse. This is where we know that the deadline for submission was here. So we know that this article had to come out in November. So we have the time frames. We know when to look for it. We know the article. We know the submission. And again, having all that information, they've done a really good job of scrubbing this. Now, I'm going to turn this over to Paula and Mike and have them talk about some of the issues.
Can I ask a question real quick first?
Fire away.
The reverse on the dime in question, is the flaw on the lower right of the reverse?
If you turn it the correct way, if you flip it coin turn, it lines up with the count.
It does. It's not above it?
No.
Okay. I was seeing something and I was like, wow. If that
I have here. I'll show you.
Because you can't hardly see it. Oh, all right. I see.
Putting in there.
I thought it was in where his little cross is right now.
There you go. So this is what we're talking about right here.
Here's my problem with the whole thing, Eric, was that to me,
Can you zoom in? It's in there.
to me, it was so typical and it was so obvious that it was just post-mint damage.
Oh, I agree.
We've seen counter stamps a million
I
times.
have a bunch of them on my desk.
And to make it as a bridle, that's hilarious.
When Kaneka published this, that's when I got offended. Because it's like any jerk can publish whatever they want. And they're not always true. But this is a group. This is a well-respected group within our hobby.
Yeah.
that we look at
Dude.
as experts. And they just screwed the pooch.
Oh,
There's no better way of looking at it.
Absolutely.
I can tell you what happened with that.
See what?
They had no editor at the time.
It's kind of like the story with the 55 double die. They weren't inspecting dies at all. Nobody's at the wheel.
And the person just probably skimmed through the article, and there was enough convincing text that without even looking at the photos, and perhaps he didn't even look at the photos because they put those together in a different place.
Yeah,
They put the photos in the
the
text.
story is one place and
Yeah.
the artwork
Yeah,
is
so-
elsewhere.
Maybe he hadn't even seen. So whatever the reason was, it was a colossal screw up. And it was there was a retraction printed in the following publication.
And now
Unfortunately,
you understand why I jumped on this and said I wanted a copy of it.
yes. Oh, yeah, for sure. I just wish I would have scanned it before I said it.
Well, you have scans.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
I've been
Gone. These always
around here somewhere.
But,
Say that again, Eric.
um,
I says, I've actually got the magazine floating around here, and I actually tried to get on Kaneka this morning to see if it was still in their listings.
yeah, they-
Probably isn't, but
yeah.
I figured I would check.
And folks, I can promise you that the Kaneka site issues have nothing to do with the fact that we're talking about this morning.
It was a lack.
It's coincidence. Okay. I don't want anybody
Yeah.
going,
And it's
yeah.
the first time that I have seen something to this degree, something this bad. That, it's the people that run on these things all volunteer their time and stuff.
That's
Yeah.
right. And people don't realize how much time it takes. I
Exactly.
heard my rant this morning. I dedicated a lot of time to an association. And when everything came out, it was like I just wasted 10 years of my life.
Yeah.
That sucks.
so Luther just said that an app called the Wayback Machine filled up the original page. Okay, that's good. I didn't know that because I had searched and searched, couldn't
Well,
find
tell
it.
you what, if you ever want to see an old web page, Wayback Machine is the way to go. You go back and it will show you a copy of that web page from a specific day.
Yeah, if you can find it, Luther, if you can find any information on it, because like I said, I follow a lot of coin groups, a lot of coin community pages, and I had been following this.
It's one of the
great-
best places to look for stuff that's been scrubbed.
Okay.
And again, folks, so what I want to do, Paula, Mike, and Eric, is I want to break down a couple things. So again, we're talking about this being post-mint damage. So let's talk a little bit about, okay, not why we assume that, but why we know that. And there are some telltale signs and some discussions, and I've got some things that I'm going to share as well. But can we kind of walk through, and outside of the fact that it's an obvious counter stamp?
Let me start, since my knowledge is the most basic, and then I'll defer to Paula because she really does study this stuff more than me, believe it or not.
Copy that.
So when I saw it, my first thing is to turn the coin over. Because if this happens during strike, the reverse die will be perfect.
Right.
And so it just isn't. And so then you try to locate the damage, and when the damage is exactly opposite, it becomes an obvious counter stamp. And literally, it took that much research. That's why I was so just absolutely taken aback by it. Because to me, that says that somebody was asleep with this glitch. And look, I don't even really blame Kaneka for it. I'm more angry at the fact that you could try to scrub it
Yeah.
than anything else, because they should take this opportunity to correct themselves. Own it.
Minutes.
Explain. That's right.
And
That's the teachable moment.
And they might get volunteers if they
Like,
go to peace band.
uh,
This
I-
is not this happened.
I have to take a little bit of kind of responsibility for that too. Just because I was the one who brought it to their attention. And I very well could have sat my lazy butt down and written a kind of an article explaining why this cannot be what the guy claims. And at some point, maybe I still will. I feel like I should. Somebody should write it. an article. Now, will Kaneka publish it? They may not, because they may want to just forget it ever happened.
Well, but here's the thing, and this is really important. And Paula, when you originally talked about this, right, you went through and you broke this down, right? You
Yeah.
talked about what was going on. And this isn't just a willy-nilly one time somebody published something and it was never talked about before. We have to talk about the fact, and again, reiterate the fact, this was a story that this guy had been pushing for a long time. And this isn't the only person who's done this. There are people actively in our community who have pushed their own version of errors. This happens all the time. And I 100% agree with Mike. And when I talked about this the other day, the important thing about reminding people of stuff like this is mistakes happen. Mistakes happen. What we need to do is when they're identified, we need to correct them and explain why it occurred. If this was the fact that the person doing the editing didn't have time and they just brushed it through,
That's exactly what happened.
that is a simple clerical error. You know what? We
That's
dropped the
exactly
ball
what
here. They said they issued a retraction. So that was something that was done. I don't have the retraction, unfortunately. But something like that should have been brought up. No, I'm not blaming them for stripping this off of the site because this is something that somebody could take very easily, try to replicate. Yep. And now we've got a whole bunch of these where people are seeing this story in a published magazine by somebody Kaneka's well known, right? And so now we've got this story, people take it out of context, and now we've got people spending hundreds of dollars on something that's trash.
I have one floating around here somewhere that Ringmaster Ray made for me.
Right. And Luther, look up your thing and see if you can
I
find
want to
that.
address something that Winston Double said in the other chat. He said, wait, Kaneka called this an error. I just got in a minute ago. I want to clarify something. Kaneka did not call this an error.
Ringmaster Ray's
Kaneka
here.
just published an article written by somebody who called this an error. Kaneka absolutely did not call this an error. There is not one of their examiners who would have looked at this coin and said it was anything other than damage.
This is a administrative oversight.
Yes.
That's what this is, right? This is, so it's going to be under Kaneka. I'll get Paula. Can you put the?
retraction couldn't have been deleted, Luther, because it was in print.
But you have to be a member to
Person
find.
or scope itself, probably within the.
The
next
more
month.
scope. In the very next month, it was in.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, so somebody who's a member of Kaneka will have to pull that up, access that.
March day roll. But
When I get out of here, we'll see if we can find this, and then I'll post it on my community page so that people can see this.
Yeah.
it would be in the episode that, or in the issue that would be required all entries by December 1st. So it would be January, February.
January, February, yeah. So tell you guys that at some point early on, somebody explained to this guy that the reason it's an impossibility is because of the damage to the reverse, right? At some point, somebody pointed that out. So if you'll notice in the article, the majority of the explanation is focused on the reverse die and why it is the way it is. All the scans that he supposedly had done with the electron microscope, all of the test pieces were all about the reverse die. So he spends his time explaining away the fact, or trying to explain away the fact that obverse counterstamp caused damage to the reverse of the dime. And he tries to explain it as it somehow having something to do with the reverse die, which it doesn't. That coin was struck completely normal. I have an example here. It's an extreme example. If Frostbyte wants to pull me up real quick.
It's me to pull her up. Hold on just a minute.
His explanation on how it became is also very poor.
It is. And it makes no sense. First of all, the BEP does not have anything to do with the U.S. Mint.
That's
and never want
right.
to bring their stuff to the U.S. Mint to have any work done on anything that has anything to do with anything.
That's correct. And if you were to, let's just play devil's advocate and say that this was a possibility, even though we know it's not. The relief on the printing plate
It's
it's so flat. If anybody's ever seen it with the way they
Yeah,
make
it's
offset
not
printing
perfect.
plates, it would not put itself in, even if it was
Yeah.
molten red hot.
Yeah.
It would not. Number one, it would probably melt the foil that the offset plate is made on. But two, there's not enough relief to actually make the impression into the die. It's that deep. It's an obvious stamp. Plus, the font is wrong.
So this is a cap die strike. For those of you that said that's what it is, it was very thinned out and wrinkled up and stuff. But that's the obverse of it. So it's technically a struck through, but on the reverse, you'll notice it's completely normal. The reverse die is not affected at all.
So let's walk through this, Paula. Can you explain how this occurs? And again, when we talk about this, understanding a minting process is extremely important.
So a coin enters the striking chamber, right? A planchet enters the striking chamber. And it, for whatever reason, gets stuck to the obverse die. It gets stuck up there. And as it's and it covers up the
Die.
Yeah, the detail in the
covers up
die.
thank you, the detail. The die, yes. So it covers up all of the details on that die. And as it's striking more and more planchets, it gets thinner and thinner. It can fall out after striking one planchet. It can fall off after striking thousands of planchets. Part of it can break off and fall off. But it
The
will.
planches confused together.
Yeah, the planchet. Oh, then that's beautiful when that happens. All kinds of beautiful, horrible things can happen. Horribly wrong things can go wrong and that are beautiful. But it's still, the reverse die is not affected because it's stuck to the obverse. Same with any strike through. You can get a struck through grease. It will only affect that one, the die that it's stuck to or struck in between.
And then the front of the coin will look like Athens.
If the grease is on the obverse die, it will only affect the die. If the grease is on the reverse die, it will only affect the reverse die because there's a planchet in between those two dies.
Can I draw a distinction?
Can you what?
Draw a distinction.
You draw whatever you want.
If he's an artist, then yes.
I'm an artist as far as this goes. So something I think is really important to know is the difference between an error and a variety. Because an error is something that happens once and it's over. It's something like a strike through. It's something like a clogged die. It's something like a die cap. A variety is something that happens during the die making process
Yeah,
and then is transferred to every coin that's struck by that die.
correct. Exactly the same. And the reason, even though this struck through cap die can strike multiple planchets before it falls off, every time it strikes one, it changes.
It changes.
It thins out, it changes somehow. Originally, this one wasn't wrinkled and stuff like this. This is a beautiful example, in my opinion. It's wrinkled, it's probably rotated, and all kinds of things happen to this.
And Luther, you are correct. You can have an error on a variety. Yeah, that is correct.
Oh,
Yes.
you can.
So I want to go over one more thing, and this is something that I wanted to show specifically regarding this. Let me get out of this screen and pull up something else that I wanted to share with the group. And this is specifically related to Bureau of Engraving and Printing. In order for the typeset that the gentleman was talking about, you would have to understand how the plates are made. And I've got a couple of things here that I'm going to show. Actually, I got to take this out because I have to have, whoops, wrong one. Let me get to the right screen. Okay. I have to make sure that I can show this. When you talk about money, and again, Bureau of Engraving and Printing is not the same facility. They're not located in the same place. They're totally disparate of each other. The Bureau of Engraving and Printing does not do coins. The mint does not do paper money. You will never have the equipment from one or the other. It's just not how that works.
They're in different cities.
Yeah, they're not even close to each other.
And you are not going to have anything near a die drying rack. Those dies cost a lot of money to make, and they are not going to just willy-nilly set something on top of a rack.
That's right. And for it to be hot, it would have to be coming out of the annealing oven.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so I want to get back
There's
to
something
this
going on.
and walk through a couple pieces just for the sake of doing this. And again, I'm bouncing back and forth between a couple different screens because the people in vertical mode, I'm trying to give them the best view of this screen. So I am shifting it back and forth. So bear with me as I do this. So when we look at this, what the statement was that these pieces fell off and they were sitting on the die and they pushed in. However, when you look at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, the ink in the paper, the way that they utilize this, the type of presses that are utilized to print money actually used an incuse surface. That means it goes into the surface of the plate. That's where the ink fills up, and you actually have a raised ink. So the fact that they're saying that this is incuse in the coin, there's no way that a plate could have had the incuse letter there because it would be incuse on that plate.
The whole thickness of the plate is less than the impression of this 5.
Yeah, the other thing that I want to show you is a $5 bill.
There you go.
Okay, let's just look at the 5. We're going to go back and forth, and unfortunately, I can't split these two. But I want you to look at the $5 bill. Okay, this is the $5 bill 2021. This was the series that would have been available during this time frame. And I want you to look at the 5s. Clearly not the same. Okay, so we have to look at, is the one on the $5 note for the serial number the same? And the answer is no. It's not even the same style format.
The one where he's claiming it came from is, show that $5 bill again.
When to get the
Where it says D1 down there. Aren't those the numbers that
No,
represent
he's
the
saying
bank that it goes to?
QL 406, those numbers, but it had an E5
What are
in
the
it.
numbers that indicate the Federal Reserve Bank that it goes to?
Right
That's
here.
the-
Be L12.
Okay.
It's over here. It's in the bottom right corner. FW is Fort Worth.
I think he's meaning these letters that would be L12.
Anyway,
What would be a print, I believe, a print batch number.
now he said it was indicating Richmond, Virginia.
Well,
The
73
Federal
would actually
Reserve
could be
Bank of
different.
Richmond, Virginia.
So what Paula is saying is correct. What they assume is it's not, the serial number doesn't exist on the plate. The serial number exists on the printing machine. They're talking about the Federal Reserve District, Richmond, which is 5.
And that would
Right.
have been
In
around
1973, the font is a lot bigger in that lower corner.
Yeah.
It's still not that big. It's still not big enough.
They're wrong.
that's
It's
tiny.
the wrong size.
That's teeny tiny.
Whoever fabricated this nonsense, why even
No.
close?
That's right. Not
It is
even
so
close.
comical.
But my point is, if you look at one of these bills, and we can even go to, here, let's do this.
Frustratingly comical.
So here's the $5 from that time frame. We're looking at 1914 to 1933. There's different ones here, and you can look at the reverse and stuff like this. But when you look at those numbers, we would have to find one that had the 5 to see if the font was the same. But
I doubt it. It's tiny.
It's too big. I'm looking at a dime right now through the loop. That E is 3/8 of an inch long. That 5 is just under 3/8 of an inch. There is no way that those are on a bill. Goes from the tip of the nose down through cheek.
So one rule that I stand by in this hobby, especially when it comes to errors, is Occam's razor.
Yep.
Right.
There's errors.
With everything, really. Simplest explanation is usually the most correct one. The one that takes the least amount of assumption. This guy.
What I want to show, and again, I'm looking through multiples of these, is the font in the lettering. This is from 1963. The font in all of these are the same. The lettering on all of these fonts are the same. It's a little bit smaller, obviously, when you get down into the smaller numbers, but it doesn't matter which one. The fonts are always the same. And so you can shift through the various years and look at these. The fonts are the same, right? Now, obviously, this number is not exactly the same, but the fonts are always the same. They change security elements in this, but they don't necessarily change the font.
As a matter of fact, they try as hard as they can to make it as consistent as they can, just like fast food.
That's right.
They want it to be recognizable. They want it to be consistent. They want it to be the same.
And so this just doesn't match.
It's so much fun to talk about, though. It's very
They come
wonderful.
in every day and they ask me. They're like, Mike, it's like you just take a look at something. No, it's fake. How do you judge so fast?
Yeah.
And basically what I've told them is it's just a matter of trusting your instinct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our first impression is correct.
Long.
Yep.
How do you know it looks right? Have you ever taken a family picture? Has anybody ever tried to sneak one of the neighbor kids in on you? Because you'd notice it wouldn't look right. You may not even be able to put your finger on it at first, but it doesn't look right. From word go with this, I looked at it, I'm like, no, it's a counter stamp. It's obviously a counter stamp.
So Azure Blue asks a really good question. Usually counterfeiter motivation is to scam to make money. What was the Richmond Dime creator's intent? I'm not going to say it isn't the same, but what we do
don't
see,
think he created this.
I think
He found this.
I think there was malicious intent.
Yeah.
the problem is we have people in the community right now who they want their name associated with the identification of things. They want to be the discoverer. They want to have their name in lights. They want that recognition. They want the whatever you want to call it that goes along with that.
Be somebody.
Yeah. And so I think, I'm not saying that's what the intent of this particular thing was, but I kind of lean towards that. Because if you can identify something and you can explain it, it ends up to be true. What happens? People look at you and you're knowledgeable, you're very smart. Oh my gosh, I really need to go to them. This guy's the expert. And that motivates a lot of people to want that discovery piece. They want that notification. They want that notoriety. And I think that's where this comes from. But I can't honestly say that he didn't genuinely believe this.
I think he did genuinely believe this.
I think so.
Because
Right?
if you read the beginning of the article, it starts out with his little tour as a child of the U.S. Mint. And he probably saw a photo of a bonded coins or something like that. I don't know what the U.S. Mint had framed pictures on their wall or whatever of, but if it was an error coin, it was probably something super extreme, like one of the, what did they have, Mike? Is it like 100 different, is the most of the bonded coins is like 100 coins bonded together or something? It's a huge cluster.
Yeah, you're completely out of my depth with it, but I've seen them 20 and 25 coins deep.
Yeah, I think that there's one that, and it may be the one that he's talking about, where there was a pile up and the coins bonded. They just kept striking these planchets, and it's just a huge cluster of struck bonded coins. Because when in the striking chamber, when coins are struck, they become almost liquid. The metal becomes almost liquefied. It's so hot that the striking action generates so much heat that metal almost becomes liquefied for less than a blink of an eye, but in that moment. So these coins, as they're these planchets, as they're being fed into these striking chambers, they just keep getting struck, and it just piles up, and they become bonded together. So it may be something like that he saw a photo of. And then somewhere down the line, this dime came into his possession. And it probably was in change. And he immediately thought he had found a holy grail.
Yes.
And as opposed to actually learning the minting process, created one of his own.
Well, he definitely has a legacy.
He took a lot of time on this. Like I said, I had seen for multiple years, I had followed this guy going from community page to community page. So he had time invested in this. And at some point, he just couldn't let it go because he had invested so much time in it. And
Okay, so here's the funny thing about fame or about just being known for something is that it's a double-edged sword. It's a huge double-edged sword because once people start to listen to you and they start to take what you say as being gospel, you've got to be really careful of what you say, that you don't say something that's wrong. Because that's what we're talking about here. Kaneka built themselves a reputation of being the experts, the scholars, the people that did the research and gave you the right answer on this stuff, and they dropped the ball.
yeah,
I think the only reason we're talking about this is because we have so much respect for Kaneka.
Yeah, and again, I reiterated this at the beginning, Mike. This isn't anti-Kaneka. This isn't anti-CoinScope. This is just clarification of an issue and explaining why these things happened and the importance of why we're talking about this.